Hi, it's the Chappiness Guide. Welcome to today's episode of Vestibular Talks. Today's very special guest is Heather. Heather is a vestibular warrior. She's been diagnosed with Menieres disease as well as vestibular migraines. But this hasn't stopped Heather from living her best life. Heather hosts a podcast called Menieres Muse. You can find her on Instagram and you can find her on Audible and as well as Spotify. Heather is here with us today to share her journey with us and let us know a little bit about how she's been able to live a full life regardless of her diagnosis. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy the episode, guys. Find your happiness. All right. Good morning, Heather. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. I'm great.
Awesome. Well, welcome to this episode of Vestibular Talks. I know we've been talking about it for a little while to share your journey, and I actually haven't done an interview in a couple of months because I've been quite busy with work. So let's end this year 2022 with a great interview together. How does that sound?
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. All right, Heather, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how your journey began?
Well, my name's Heather, and my journey began in 2016. I was working as a behavioral health nurse and going to school full time. I was running a fitness class for the company I work for, 3 to 4 nights a week, sometimes five if they got me to do that. And then, of course, going home and taking care of my 3-year-old and 16-year-old at the time. So I had no white space on my calendar, and I was just running through life, just crazy, just go go go. And I started having some pressure on the top of my head as I studied one night, and some pressure and some tingling, and I just ignored it. And I'm just like, okay, it's just overload, my brain overload. And this went on for a couple of weeks, and then I told my mother, who's a cardiac nurse, and she's like, "You need to go in and get that checked out." I'm like, "Okay, if I experience it again, I'll go in." And just a little back history: I have had vertigo at least 1 to 2 episodes yearly since I was a teenager. So that I was used to, and it would only last for a day, and then it would be gone. And
Okay.
I really don't know if that was hormonal or what that was from. So I was used to vertigo, well, in small amounts.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the ER because I did get that numbness and tingling again. And of course, they immediately sent for a stroke team because my blood pressure was elevated. And I think it was just the anxiety of being there. And they ruled that out. Nothing was going on. But they did find, they sent me for a CT. They did find I had a very small brain tumor and called a meningioma. And after going through everything, it wasn't doing anything. And it really could have been the cause of it, but it wasn't. So it kind of set me back to finding out what was going on and being truly diagnosed because of that incidental finding. That's still there. That's not growing. It's just people live with them their entire lives, with no problem.
Still kind of scary though when you hear the words brain tumor, you're like, what?
It was terrifying. I
Yeah.
really had no idea what was going on. So when I walked out of there, I was kind of in a fog. I didn't have an answer of what was going on. I mean, the tumor could have been the problem, but it wasn't. After many, many doctors, and I fell into the lap of my primary care physician. He was just a doll. And he hated seeing me struggle because my symptoms, it went from just the numbness and tingling to vertigo and tinnitus and hyperacusis, just the whole
Mm-hmm.
gamut. And he was determined to figure out what was going on. So he sent me to numerous doctors and labs and tests and nothing. I did get loosely diagnosed with BPPV,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't satisfied with that. So he sent me to Mayo Clinic, to a multidisciplinary clinic, where they sent me to multiple specialties, and then all the specialty doctors got together and discussed what they found. And that's when I was diagnosed with Menieres disease and vestibular migraine. I didn't know I had hearing loss until they told me, and I'm like, okay, but now it's significant enough that I know that I have right-sided hearing loss. So I stopped everything. I took a leave of absence from work. I withdrew from school. I just became a shell of myself. I, when the symptoms were so bad, I think because I didn't know how to live this new life, you know, and I just shut down, and my body I wasn't recognizing anymore. I had no strength in my legs. It's so crazy how it snowballed into something so minor from just this to all the symptoms.
Yeah.
And vertigo was a daily thing for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. And with having a 3-year-old at home,
That's more difficult even. Yeah. Heather, so even being diagnosed with one thing, like let's say whether it was Meniere's or vestibular migraines,
right,
is tough, is difficult for the people that don't understand how this affects our lives. It stops you from working, it stops you from going out, it stops you from living a normal life,
right,
and that's one diagnosis. Let alone you being diagnosed with two of them, two of the most, I don't want to say difficult, but two conditions that are extremely intense. The symptoms themselves are very difficult to live with. Um, did they propose any plan of action? I mean, first of all, kudos to your doctor that he was like pushing to find answers. That's great, because most doctors, as you know, are not like that. Most doctors are kind of like washing their hands and they're like, you figured it out type of thing. So
right.
great for your doctor. But did they propose any sort of treatment or any sort of remedies that could help you?
Um, I had a couple. The first one was an ENT that he was focused on the vertigo, and that was before I was diagnosed. So he gave me a beta blocker, and it really did lessen the vertigo, but none of the other symptoms. I still had vertigo daily, but it just wasn't that floor hugging vertigo where I just couldn't function. Um, so I did do some trial and error with other medications, and I just couldn't do anything besides the beta blocker, and they gave me a diuretic later on down the road too. And then I just, it wasn't enough. I was still suffering. And so I got sucked into that darkness, and like a lot of us do, I went on Facebook and I went on Instagram and scrolled through the comments and seeing that other people were struggling, but I wasn't finding much hope. And it wasn't until a friend of mine visited, which I didn't have many visitors because people just didn't know what was going on. And I'll never forget, I was at my darkest spot. I mean, I was literally in my room with the door closed and the lights were out, no TV because I couldn't handle noise. And she turned to leave that day and turned to me and said, I guess you're going to have to dream another dream. And that hit me so hard, I would probably cry. Hit me so hard because I never thought of my husband and my dreams that we've talked about for years never coming true. Oops, excuse me. That is when I'm so thankful for her. Yes, it was brutal to me at that time, but I needed that. I needed that real reality check that, okay, I either need to dream another dream or just, just stay in this bed. But I chose to take a real serious look at my internal dialogue. Okay, so I'm having physical symptoms. What can I do to live my best life with these symptoms and get out of this bed and do something? I was usually a very motivated person, and it just took everything out of me. And so I had to, I started doing a lot of soul work and realized that a lot of that was missing out of my life, spirituality, and I wasn't taking care of myself nutritionally because I was on the run all the time, just grabbing as I go. And yeah, so there's a lot missing. So I had a lot of work to do.
It's interesting because, like you mentioned, not only the medication does kind of help, but that's not the only answer. Like there are other aspects that you have to address. It's a holistic approach,
It
and I
is.
learned that myself as well. Like you have to approach this with medication. It does help with certain diets, with exercises, with the way how you live your life, because most of us at the point that we got hit by this, we were hyperachievers. We were on top of the world. We were constantly go 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 go
Yeah.
go, high stress, constantly like eating whatever we could eat. Like we weren't really taking care of ourselves.
No.
But when this hits us, it kind of like puts us stop, as you know, it puts like a pause on life, and you have to start addressing all aspects of your life if you do want to get better. So
Yeah.
people tell me, or so people ask me, hey, what kind of pills do you take so I can take them too? And I said, if you're gonna approach it like that, I mean, I can tell you what I'm taking. It doesn't mean that it's gonna help you, or it might not help you, but you have to approach it from all angles. You have to take a look at what you're doing with your daily life, with your spirituality. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about you yourself, like your soul, the inside of you. You start to really think, who am I, and what kind of value can I give the world, even though I'm experiencing these crazy symptoms.
Right.
And also it changes your relationships with your family, with your friends, with the society. So all these are aspects that you have to address in order to get better, like you were saying. Now, Heather, you mentioned that you had to stop working because obviously it's really difficult when you're constantly dizzy, when you're experiencing all these crazy, wild symptoms that are hard to explain to someone else. But what about family life? Like how the dynamics of your family life, having two young children, having a husband, how did that change because of this?
I will tell you, my husband is, I'm so thankful for him. He's so supportive, and he took a leave of absence from work until we figured out what was going on, and took care of the children while my mother took me across the state 6 hours to all these appointments at Mayo Clinic. Um, um, I'm sorry, there's just a story that popped in my mind because I don't know if you have, but I have like an internal vibrations at time. And I remember laying in bed asking my husband, "What are you doing shaking the bed?" And we were living in a stilt house at the time. And I'm like, I would think that he was moving in such a crazy fashion that the whole house was moving, but it was just me.
Yeah.
But he's been very supportive, almost to a fault. That he is my best cheerleader now. That he does push me when I'm having a bad day. He will tell me, "Go rest, and I'll take care of the kids." But he also will challenge me on, like if we're out to eat, "Are you sure you want to have that margarita?" Or, things like that. But it was a strain, but I never felt that because he's such an, I don't want to use empathic because he's just a nurturer.
Yeah.
And he saw me in pain, and I think he couldn't do anything, and that was painful, because he wants to fix things. So he stayed at home as long as he could, and then he had to return to work because I, took a leave of absence, and then I had to take care of my 3-year-old by myself. I still scroll through Instagram and see pictures of her. I had my ear guards on because I didn't know what to do at that point with my hyperacusis, and she's wearing the same. She's got a set too. So her voice is my highest, my biggest trigger with hyperacusis, unfortunately. So, so she mimics me on that, but we figured it out. I mean, there's silly things that I would do that people on the outside would think, "Why are you doing that?" But in order to get through, I had to adapt. I remember having a vertigo attack and putting Lila in the bathtub. It's empty, but just with her toys, so I could lay on the floor until that passed. Things like that I just, you just figure out how to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heather, okay, I want to clarify something for the people that will watch this video. Is that although our symptoms sound so surreal, they are very real. It is hard to explain them to someone else. For example, when you mentioned that you had this vibration inside of you, it is true. You feel like You feel like things are moving, things are rocking, and all of your senses become more like the input that comes through your senses is more intense.
Yeah.
You, I could hear, and this is no joke. I could, at the moment when I was feeling most of the symptoms and I was in a really bad place, I
Mhm.
could hear electricity inside my walls,
I
and I would
remember.
and I
Yeah.
would tell my wife, I'm like, do you hear that? And she's like, no. And I'm like, don't you hear zzz? And she's like, no. And I'm like, hold on, let me find it. And I will start listening to it, and I will zone where it was, and I'll tell my wife, put your ear to the wall and tell me if you hear something. And she'll put her ear, and she's like, oh my God, I hear it.
Isn't
And I
that
could hear
crazy?
it from rooms away. So things like that, also visual input. Um, I will see the world like everything was tilted to the right in an
Mhm.
angle. And I will try to explain this to people, and people will laugh. They're like, that's impossible, that's not true. And I'm like, it is. I see everything in an angle.
Right.
And people treat you like you're crazy, and people laugh at you, and people basically don't acknowledge what you're trying to say until my neurologist said to me, he's like, it's true. It's true because your vestibular sense is so out of whack right now that the communication between your vestibular system, your brain, and your eyes are picturing the world in an angle. And I'm like, you feel so acknowledged and so relieved when somebody actually tells you that you're not crazy and
Right.
these wild symptoms are true, that that is hard for people that will watch this video and they don't experience the symptoms. It's
Right.
hard for them to even relate. So what you're saying about vibration inside of you,
Yeah.
or the hypersensitivity to the sound, or things, visual symptoms, like this is so true and so real, and we have to live with it most days, because I mean, I know for you the symptoms were constant. The symptoms for me are constant, even though it's been 3.5 years since I was diagnosed.
Right.
So I want to tell people that are experiencing this that they are not crazy. You guys are feeling something that is very real, and maybe even though we might have the same diagnosis, we might not even experience the same kind of symptoms.
Right.
Symptoms very different from what Heather sees or feels to what Johan sees or feels, or whoever
Absolutely.
else. So realize that you're not going crazy, that this is very real, and that we understand you, because this
Yes.
this is this is very true. So now, Heather, how, because for children, as even though they are innocent, even though they are young, they they know when something is wrong.
Mhm.
Like, for example, my son, when I got diagnosed, I think my son was what, 12, 13 years old. He will see me crying on the ground. He will see me very dizzy. He will see me like, I used to be very independent. I used to be very tough, like in the sense that I was always like, I'm invincible. And then when this hit me, I was crying. I experienced depression. I was losing a lot of weight. I didn't want to eat. I felt nauseous every day. And my son at 12, 13 years of age had to come and comfort me and hold me and tell me everything is going to be okay, Dad. I love you. Everything is going to be okay. How did your children deal with seeing mom sick, with seeing mom experiencing these symptoms?
I'll tell you, they are so in sync. You know, they really are. My daughter, I remember one incident that she was going to go play with our dog. We have a little puggle, little fat puggle, and she knew she was going to be loud, so she came to me before she started playing and handed me my earplugs,
That's
and it just warmed my heart because she's like so aware that Mama can't handle those tones. For those out there that don't understand hyperacusis, because my father has hyperacusis, but my mother just doesn't get it. It is literally like a piercing in, like a knife into your ear, and it vibrates through your entire body. And when it happens, I freeze. And it's so intense, and it takes a little bit of time to shake that off, that feeling. Um, but no, back to your question about they are so in tune. Now, my 16-year-old, his way of dealing with it was shutting himself in his room and, you know, playing games. And we've had, now that he's 22, we've had deeper conversations about that, but it was really hard on him.
I
I think,
bet.
yeah, I think she didn't understand so much, but she did what she could to make Mama feel better. Um, yeah, I think I got away from your question.
No, no, no. It's good. Just like it's how the kids cope with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's difficult for them, and even though they are no directly involved in feeling all these symptoms, they are directly involved in the fact that you are the mom and that they see you struggling, and they I'm sure they want to help, and
Right.
they want to do whatever they can to take these feelings away from you, but they can't. So
No.
it's frustrating for them as well, and for
Yeah.
your husband, because with my wife Nancy, she will tell me, she's like, I'm begging God to help me take this dizziness away from you,
Right.
and even if I could experience it for a few days to give you a little bit of a break, I
Oh,
and I will feel so sad, because first of all, I wouldn't want anybody to experience
no.
this. Like it's just so debilitating, but also the frustration that our loved ones feel trying to help us, because they see how much we were struggling, and
Right.
they wanna get us back to who we were, to the
Normal.
happy, strong,
Yeah,
independent person. So it's very tough.
it
Heather,
is.
um, I found a lot of help with things like yoga, things like writing a diary, positive encouragement, or positive. Like I would listen to a podcast about, like reassuring words that say like, "I'm okay, I'm healthy, I'm strong," things like that. Also grounding, a lot of ground. Like I will walk on the grass without my shoes on, and people at the
Yeah,
park will look at me like, "This guy's crazy."
I don't care.
But
Yep.
I know, but it will make me feel like I was more calm, because, as you know, anxiety gets triggered by this a lot. Like you feel like your world is ending. You feel like you're trapped in this dizzy zone. You feel like there is a lot of darkness around you. So
Right.
the grounding helped me. Breathing exercises helped me. The cold showers helped me. How about you? What do you find that when Heather is feeling like really bad because the symptoms are very strong, what does Heather do to help you ground yourself again?
I do so much of what you just laid out that you do. I was never into yoga, never into meditation. I've always been a writer, so I've always journaled. But today, even it's so funny you mentioned that, because just today I was sitting at the beach with my daughter while she is burying my feet, and I just close my eyes and I just absorb everything that I'm hearing and smelling, and that to me is meditating and grounding. And I'm present, I'm there for her, but I'm also getting back to my center. And that can be just taking your shoes off and going outside and walking in the grass, anything. And people do look at you crazy, and it's, you know what? You get to a point you don't care. I started back to work last year, just working taking a couple contracts, just a couple months under the year. And and it was crazy hours, 4:30 in the morning to noon. And before I'd get on the road after my shift, I would go sit out under these oak trees, beautiful oak trees. Nobody sits out there. It's beautiful. I don't know why they landscaped it like they did, because no one sits out there. I went out there and I was having my avocado and my drink or whatever. And one of the employees that was leaving is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just, just relaxing before I get on the road and letting go of this day." And I sat out there and meditated, and they don't get it. They tease me, but it's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
It's for me.
it's what works for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
But all of that yoga and that meditating, and I hear people in groups saying, "Well, I can't do that." I said that too. It doesn't have to be this long 30-minute, 2 hours sitting. It could be 3 minutes. And after you learn to do it, and it takes some time, it really does help, because I never experienced anxiety before this.
Yeah, yeah. Same.
And it's crazy.
And it's very easy to go into panic attacks when is because it's a vicious circle. Like you get dizzy, so you get scared. You start picturing all these terrifying ideas in your mind about like, what if the dizziness doesn't go away? What if I never can go back to work? What if I become dependent on
I'm dying, and they
people?
just misdiagnosed me.
Exactly. So it starts going in a circle. So the anxiety starts creeping up again and again, and you get into a panic state. And what you mentioned is very important. I've met people that also tell me, "Oh, I can meditate. I cannot just sit there in quietness for half an hour, and I tell them meditation is different for everybody.
Yes.
Meditation doesn't mean that you have to sit there and being quiet with your own thoughts.
Nope.
Meditation could be journaling. Meditation could be going for a
Washing
walk.
dishes.
Yeah, exactly. It could be listening to positive music.
Yep.
It could be talking to someone about how you're feeling and letting all those feelings out. And meditation can be anything that makes you feel better.
Absolutely.
That's what I tell people. Like, it can be praying, it can be singing, it can be just taking a warm shower, like whatever it is that grounds you again and that helps you feel
Yeah.
better. Now, are there any things, Heather, that exasperate the symptoms? For example, I know that if I don't sleep a full night of sleep, I get extra dizzy. I know that if I drive for more than 3-4 hours in a day, I'll get out of the vehicle and I'll feel like I'm rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
If I watch too much TV, I get extra dizzy. If I'm too stressed, if I'm angry about something, I can feel right away. I start rocking inside. Or if I eat, like we were talking before we started recording, that I ate some pastries yesterday, and all this sugar and all the sweets got me moving inside right now. Are there certain things that exasperate those sensations for you?
Absolutely. Stress is one of the biggest ones. But when I say stress, people automatically go to negative stress. But that positive stress does it to me too. The excitement, if I get excited about something, um, I have to rest afterward because I do have I have symptoms come on. It's crazy to think like that. So I really have to keep an even keel of how I am responding to things. And like you mentioned, anger, things that used to bother me, trigger me before in my life, I just let it roll off my back now. I have to be really aware of how I respond to negativity, to drama. I really try to have a drama-free life. I've had to clean the slate of a lot of people in my life and clean up my Facebook because I want calm and drama-free. So
Yeah.
that and food, I was so surprised at food being triggers. But when I did the Heal Your Headache, I only did it for 3 months. I couldn't do the 6. But I'm very surprised. And I just found a new trigger yesterday. I had a migraine all day in grapefruit. I haven't had a red grapefruit in a long time, and I had it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't have
A
grapefruit.
big
So
one.
yeah, it's a constant. I'm constantly learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Heather, it's so a few things that help is consistency. Because, for
Yep.
example, when I was getting better, so for 3 years, I was doing yoga every day, meditating every day, journaling every day, doing all these practices, keeping very good watch in my diet, all these things. But when I started to get better, I went back to my old patterns of eating greasy foods, fried foods, of staying out late, of going to dance clubs, of like you start to fall back into your old pattern. I stopped doing yoga, and I noticed last week that not only I'm gaining a lot of weight, but also I'm starting to feel symptoms that I haven't felt in a really long time. So,
Yes.
so 2 days ago, I said, you know what? Back to consistency. So I started doing yoga again 2 days ago. 2 nights ago, I started doing my yoga routine. I
Good.
started breathing. I'm starting to clean my diet again. Starting this, well, yesterday I ate pastry, but
You blew that.
today I'll clean my diet.
That's okay.
So consistency is very important. It's very key because it's easy to take your health for granted. Once you start feeling good again, you're kind of like, oh well, I'm feeling better, so I'm gonna be. And I'm not saying that you can't be lenient. Like, yeah, if every now and then you wanna eat that grapefruit, go ahead. But you know the price to pay, and you know
Right.
that you cannot do it very frequently.
No.
So it's a consistency thing, and something that you mentioned, Heather, that it holds true for everybody. You have to clean your life of negativity. So whether that is certain friends or acquaintances,
Mhm.
your Instagram or Facebook accounts, the type of music that you listen to, even is harsh, but even some family members
Oh,
that
the big one. Yeah.
are judgmental or criticizing you or putting you down or telling you, oh, you're just a hypochondriac, you're just imagining all of this. Like you have to rid of that. Like you can get better, if you don't get rid of that, because
Right.
you need to focus on positivity. You have to focus on you. You have to focus on things that strengthen your nervous system. So you're very right, Heather, when you say you gotta cleanse your life. You truly do. You
Yeah.
truly do from every aspect of it if you want to get better.
Yeah.
Now, Heather, I know from our conversations that you travel quite a bit.
I
At the
do.
beginning, I couldn't travel. I used to travel a lot prior to my vestibular diagnosis. In the middle of it, I couldn't really travel because, you're dizzy, you're scared of what will happen if you get in a car, what will happen if you get in an airplane, what will happen if you get in a boat. But as I started improving and getting stronger, both physically and emotionally, I started traveling more. Now I travel, I fly every couple of months and I take vacations to different places.
Yeah.
I do notice though that certain weather changes can trigger certain symptoms.
Sure.
How is it for you? Because you travel a lot. Like how do you feel? How do you deal with it?
I will tell you, I'm in Florida now. We just returned from Oregon and coming through Texas. Thank goodness we had some time where I was down for a week because of the barometric pressure changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was intense the entire time. And it's the worst I've felt in a couple years. So the weather plays a huge role. And I know there are apps out there, but excuse me, with us living our nomadic lifestyle like we do, it's hard to keep track of that. But even my husband's on board. He's like, "Oh, babe, we can't go here. We've got to sit tight for a little bit because the pressure is going to be dropping." So it's great to have a cheerleader and someone that's keeping an eye on things like that for me. But this is what I tell people, because when I told you the story earlier of when my friend left me that day and told me to live, I need to dream another dream. Um, I never ever thought that stepping into my dream with my husband would not happen. And that was traveling. That was selling our home, purchasing a sailboat, and traveling the world. And when she said those words to me, it fueled something inside of me to just propel myself into figuring out, doing that self-care and that soul care, and just figuring out how to live this life with the symptoms, because they're not going anywhere. I have symptoms every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the intensity changes. And so I forgot why I went back to that story.
Or the barometric pressure.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So, but you can't let that fear stop you, because you'll just be stagnant. Okay, if you go and you have a crappy day, then you have a crappy day. You might have a wonderful day the next
Yeah,
day.
that's true.
And we did sell our home and we moved on to a sailboat, and it was terrifying.
Oh, I bet.
It was terrifying. First off, the first thing I needed to hear was, I told my neurotologist, "What do you think about this?" And he did not bat an eye. He says, "I think it's wonderful. I think it would help your vestibular system." So that's all I needed to hear. So we made a six month plan and we did it. And my husband and I, he's like, "If we get on there and your symptoms are worse, we'll come back to land." And they
Nice.
weren't. They weren't. So I think the people that are afraid to travel, you have to try.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, you can't do it. But man, but if you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot
Mhm.
of times, Heather, our own anxiety is created by our own fears that might not even become a reality. Like
Yeah.
you might be putting all these fears into your mind and getting anxious about something that might not even happen.
Yeah, and
Um,
your brain, your body thinks that what's going on in your brain is actually happening.
it's real. Yeah,
So yeah.
that's the difference. Yeah, that's very true. Now, Heather, what does the future hold for Heather?
Oh my goodness. I will tell you, we're leaving Florida in spring, and I'm going to continue on with. I have a podcast called Menieres Muse, and it's a lot like what you do here, sharing vestibular warrior stories. And we're traveling up the east coast of the U.S. and across the northern states, and I plan on meeting as many vestibular warriors as I can along that trip. And my husband's on board with that, so it's just cool, because I think the more we share, the more we heal.
Yeah,
There's so much, and there's so much healing in sharing our story. And I mean, my vestibular family, I'm sure like yours, has grown so much in the last few years.
and you have to be very selective of this, because like you mentioned earlier during the interview, you said that you went into the rabbit hole of Facebook groups and Instagram chats, and they could be helpful, but they could also be very damaging, because at the
Yes.
beginning I started going into these forums, finding people saying, "Oh, you're never gonna get better. Oh, all the medication is toxic and it's just gonna make you worse. Oh, I've been living with this for 30 years and it just gets worse and worse and worse." So when you're at the height of it and you're reading these things, you start catastrophizing in your mind. You're like, "Oh my God, like this is horrible. Like I'm never gonna get my life back." So you gotta be very selective, because there are people out there that are very supportive, that are very positive, that like you and me, although we have symptoms,
Right.
we still manage to live our life to the fullest, and we try to encourage other people to do the same. So that you have to be selective with the type of information that you actually take in, and whatever is toxic or negative or stuff, you can read it if you want, but try not to take it too hard and to be like,
Right.
"Oh no, this is gonna be my future now." Like don't you gotta be very selective with the type of information. So you're very right.
Absolutely.
You meet a lot of wonderful people out there that are living their best life, and that's the vestibular family that everybody
Mhm.
just understands. We all relate to each other, so we understand each other. Heather, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Well, on Instagram, I'm at Menieres Muse. Yeah, I'm at Menieres Muse. And also have my personal profile on Instagram is My Yummy Messy Life, which that shares all of our adventures and my personal life. But if you just want to stick with Menieres, Menieres Muse, and the podcast is available on most platforms. I will tell you, my favorite platform that I'm on right now is Audible. And the reason I say that is because people can go in and bookmark parts of the podcast that they want to come back to. So I love that. But yeah, reach out. I'm an open book. I mean, there's so many, our stories have so many um, different offshoots, of this and that. And it's just too much to share in one time. But healing is possible. And having a vestibular family to lean on when you are having crappy days rocks.
Important. Yeah,
Yeah.
Heather, as you know, this channel is called Find Your Chappiness, which is a play on word on Find Your Happiness.
Yes.
So how does Heather find her chappiness?
How does Heather find her chappiness?
Yeah,
Oh goodness. I just I try to live in joy. And it's not always easy, but I really try to live here and I try not to be busy anymore. I kind of live a sloth life. You know, I do everything slow, and if it's not going to raise me up or help me physically or mentally, I just kind of stay away from it. Yeah.
it's funny you said a sloth life, because usually when you look at pictures or videos of sloths, what are they usually doing? They're smiling. What, like, have you seen their little face? Like they
Yeah.
always have like a smile on. They
Yeah.
move so slowly, and they're like barely making any progress as they
I
move,
know.
but they always have a smile on. Like their face is always smiling. So when you said that, I right away thought of that. I'm like, they are always smiling. Maybe that's the secret. We just gotta slow down our busy lives and
Yeah.
enjoy everything, and not take it for granted. Yeah.
That's right. It's hard to do, especially when you come from backgrounds like you and I, where we're just constantly moving. But I
Yeah.
will tell you, even my daughter has taken on this. She will be the one that stops me as we're walking down a sidewalk and sees a little dandelion growing out of the cracks, and it brings me back to the present because they watch everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees. She had a really tough day with some children the other day, and I took her to the beach to kind of give her her happy place. And she's sitting there on a table, and I was, her back was to me. And as I walked around, she was sitting there with her eyes closed, just in deep thought. She's 9. So I'm like, oh my gosh, if more people could just find that place and trust themselves,
Yeah.
what a great place this would be.
Yeah. Amen. I
Yeah.
agree. All
Yeah.
right, Heather. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed the fact that we actually were able to do this, because funny.
Sorry.
No, no, don't be. I know we're busy, and you know what? I always believe that. So I believe in God. I'm not religious, but I do believe in God, and I feel that God allows things to happen when the timing is right. So, so I think that if it's happening right now, it's because the time is right for us and for the people that are going to benefit from watching this as well.
Yes.
So I'm very happy that you're a part of my life. I'm very happy that you know that we can openly communicate with each other and that we can joke and that we can laugh and that we can talk about things that are very personal. So I would like to say this to everybody that is watching, that this vestibular family is awesome, and there are a lot of people out there that are willing to listen to you, to hear you out, to support you. And even though we might live countries away or thousands of miles away,
Yep.
we are able to relate, and we're able to kind of like send that long distance hug that you kind of feel when someone tells you, I understand you, and you know, like everything is going to be okay. So I'm very happy that you're a part of my life. You have a friend in Canada. If you and your husband and your kids and the dog ever want to make it up here, just make sure that I have a lot of dogs
Aww.
and a cat as well. So
Oh,
they are gonna be playing with a lot of your kids are gonna be playing with all these
I might
dogs.
take you up on that.
Hey, there you go. You have a home here anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Johan. I appreciate it.
All right, Heather, have a good one. Talk
Hey,
soon.
you too. Bye.